Afternoon all. With such a distinguished panel, with each of our panelists having their wealth of experience in diverse fields of law, I feel it appropriate for BW to have convened a panel like this for a topic so crucial in these present times. You know, I was only today years old when I found out that the popular saying that jack of all trades is a master of none is actually incomplete. It says that the jack of all trades is a master of none, but better yet, it's not as bad as being the master of none. So the emphasis and the focus on specialization these days, it's something that daunts everyone. It's something that nobody's talking about enough. An upcoming attorney like myself, I'm going to start the panel with asking the topic question, the other way around actually. I would like to hear from our senior members on the panel whether advanced legal education is the only path to specialization in India. Does our existing system comprising of professional experiences, networks, mentorship, panels, discussions like the present, isn't that enough for subject matter specialization? I'd like to ask Mr. Abhisshek to respond to that.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks to BW for giving us an opportunity. So for this particular thing, like I'll just give a comparative analysis of how I started off my journey in 2008 and where we are standing at this point of time. Way back in 2008, ideally, the education was particularly from a legal education, I was not much aware about the national law schools, how the education in terms of legal is growing up, right? And now I see how the schools are going up is phenomenally like excellent. Like I can give you one of my relatable example. My niece is studying in a law school, and she is getting to study at least the advanced subjects like competition law and all, which I was not able to. And for that purposes only, I had to travel abroad to get my higher educations. If I have to say at this point of time, yes, the existing education system is growing up, and they are doing their best in terms of getting up. But if I have to make a comparative analysis in terms of how we work in our MNCs or the law firms, what we expect from an resource, I think that would still require a bit more in comparative to what we are getting in the education system.
With this, I'll turn to Mr. Thukral here. I just wanted to understand, you're in a highly specialized area of law. I mean, ESG is upcoming, environmental law, sustainability specialists, those are concepts unheard of from all of us. Are there any notable differences in your experience on the level of specialization that would be for somebody who studied this vis-a-vis somebody who's entered the specialization through their experience in the profession?
Thank you, Vishrutyi, and a warm greeting to my co-panelists and the audience and all the aspiring students sitting out in the audience here. Well, for me, when I did my LLM in environmental law, energy and climate change, it was a consequence of my interest in the field. So I wasn't chasing to do a specialization per se. It just so happened that today when I'm working as an ESG practitioner, it's because of the interest that I had in it. And my specialization is a consequence of my interest area. So even if somebody does not have a specialization and has interest and can learn on the job, I don't see that these paths are cut out in stone and you can't mend it in your way. It's your own journey. So if you can choose not to have a specialized degree and still mend your way through your practical experience, that will still work. But what happens is when you have a specialized degree, it lets you enter the market, and you definitely have an edge over others because you have secured a formal knowledge about that area, and that's something which will always keep you an edge above others. But like I said, there are literally no stones set distinctions where you can't learn it on the job or you can't learn it off the job. It's your interest area. So definitely before specialization, what's a prerequisite is your interest area. If your interest is clear and if you know where to go, I think then specialization is something that one can go for.
Thank you. But I'm just curious, like, I think we're all ad idem on the fact that there is a need for specialization. There are opportunities, there are roles that currently require you to specialize. But I'll turn to Pankaj for this question. How feasible is it practically for somebody to finance, say, a specialization? We all talk about it being inculcated in our legal education system. But very often you need to go out there, get that experience, get those finances in place. Everybody can't afford an LLM, everybody can't afford to go and get that specialization. So I'd like you to address the practicality on the feasibility of a specialization at the education level.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. Now, when we say about the further legal education, now a specialization legal education is basically your determination and your commitment towards your learning. It's a learning curve, we all agree this. But the fact remains the same that, for example, when I started my journey, so I hail from a law school known as National Law University, Odisha. I was the first batch of it. Now, normally in a law school, you have certain seniors who act as a mentor. But for us, there was a different situation where there was no spoon feeding at all. We tried for moot courts. We were not able to understand whether to refer a sample judge, a lordship, or a sir, or surgery. There are difficulties all over the place. We used to travel to nearby cities to our school seniors to understand what all legal issues can be cropped up. So from my personal experience of my 5-year of law student journey, I took it as a challenge, and we did a lot of moot courts, seminars, conferences, workshops. And what I will advise to everybody is that in your span of 5 years or 3 years, whatever the case may be, you should first try each and everything which this noble profession can offer to you. Once you are done with that phase, you understand your area of interest, what you really want to do, because the hard reality is that if you are doing certain particular kind of profession which is not of your area of interest, it would not lead to you to the mark you actually wanted to achieve, right? Now, when I say it has 2 points, the first part was, it is good to have a legal education and everything, higher education, but we should also undertake the fact that it requires investment and time. Everybody has its different situation, and taking into account all those factors, you should take an appropriate decision when you want to go for a higher education. It can be one possibility. The moment you are a law graduate, you can take those further steps, maybe get a scholarship or something like that. But trust me, each and every student is not able to get that opportunity. So you should wait for your time, hold up on your shoes, get into the profession, maybe gain 2 or 3 years of experience. Once you have a little edge in terms of marketability, in terms of networking, then you can go for global experience. And then eventually you can, factor in those legal issues. And one more aspect could be that, irrespective of you are working in a law firm or an in-house. So I had this opportunity to first go and deep dive into law firm's practices. Then eventually I turned up into an in-house hybrid role, wherein we are doing a lot of mergers and acquisition on a daily basis, I would say. We almost completed 20 to 30 M&As in last 1 year. What the biggest learning was that, in the current dynamic business environment, you should not restrict yourself. We now need people who are not only into law, but also understand the business as well, So for doing that, to understand the global perspective, to understand the cross-jurisdictional challenges, we should definitely go for further education, further legal specific in area of interest, and then eventually, do the needful as per your requirements.
Thank you. I'm wondering if our country is asking this question or discussing this topic a little too late in the day, or is it? I'll point to Kanika in view of her experience in the Middle East and in the UK. We've always seen the global outlook of, say, a law firm or of a lawyer outside. He'd always represent himself as a specialist. I'm an arbitration lawyer, I'm an IPR lawyer. We Indians don't do that. We're always an all-service firm. We're an all-service lawyer. So do you think it is a Western impact, or do you think as a country we are really seeing the value of specialization today?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that. I have done my law school from the UK, from the University of Reading. Before I answer the question that has been posed to me, just two things. One, there is no hard and fast rule. There is no hard and fast mechanism which can be titled as this is the right way to do it, whether it's your education or practice thereafter. Whatever works the best for you is what you should opt for. The only way to know that is to experiment a little bit in your formative years. Second, this is only my experience, which you may not relate to, but I can only be of any help by sharing this with everyone here. When I moved to India, I've done all of my education. I come from a CBSE background, went to law school in the UK, did my master's, did my doctorate. And then I came to India to practice. I met my mentor, my former boss, Mr. Hero Advani. But how it all happened was that when I actually moved to the UK for my law school, I was, suddenly studying a different regime from a typical CBSE background. And on my first paper that I had to submit, there were only 2 Indians in the batch. It was me and my friend in a batch of 300 people. And we were brought in to the professor's office after we submitted our first paper on legal skills. Darling, your papers are literally 70% similar. We term it as plagiarism over here. I said, what is that? I had zero idea, because in CBS, you open Wikipedia, you copy paste everything, and you're through with your assignment. And then you start seeing a different world. You never use laptops in school, suddenly you're using all your notes on laptops. First year was all compulsory modules. You get a basic understanding of what the law is. We never had to memorize our bare acts, the statutes. We were always allowed to take statutes in the examination halls, because our professors were always very adamant that you need to know where to look to find the law, the right provision. You don't have to memorize it. First year got done. Second year, 50% compulsory, 50% electives. Third year, 100% electives. Choose what you want to choose. One of the modules that I chose was environmental law, because I had read a lot about it. Now bear this in mind, every module that we pick is 50% examination, 50% plain research, papers that you have to submit. So research becomes something that you start doing on an everyday basis. You're researching, you're reading, you're writing, and you publish your articles and papers. Studying environmental law actually got me to a specialization. I started discussing it more with my professor. And my professor said, why don't you watch this movie called The Story of the Seven Sisters? It was on the 7 biggest oil companies in the world. And I got so involved and so attracted to that movie, I did my master's in oil and gas law because I wanted to specialize. I did oil and gas law, again, 4 compulsory modules, 4 electives, one of them being international commercial arbitration. Today, I'm an international commercial arbitration lawyer who specializes in oil and gas contracts, with a doctorate in oil and gas law. Yes, specialization matters. If somebody comes and tells me, and I have tons of times when someone comes and asks me, should we do a master's? I said, do you want to do a master's? Yeah, maybe I should. I said, why? What does your interest lie in? You don't have to do a master's if you don't want to do one. And if you want to do a master's, you would rather do it in a specialization. As my fellow panelists pointed out, yes, it gives you a head start. It does give you an in to the industry. But do it only when you're absolutely confident that you want to do it in this field. Because there will come a point when you will start breathing that subject. You will start being obsessed with that subject, and you'll become an industry expert of that subject. And there is no harm in doing that if you're confident that this is what you want to do. When I came to India, yes, I'm often posed with the question that, are you a disputes lawyer or are you a corporate lawyer? There are 2 broad categories of lawyers. I'm a disputes lawyer, and I don't like to go to court very much. I'm an arbitration lawyer, But I think being a disputes lawyer, it involves a lot of strategy, it involves a lot of negotiation skills, involves a lot of business skills that you need to have. And slowly and steadily, there are about 15 to 20 branches of even a disputes lawyer that you may specialize in. But it's only with time, it's only with experience, it's only with talking to the current industry experts will you understand where you actually want to be.
A great life experience I wish I could speak of like a few years later in my life. Unlike yours, most of us have a slightly more like standard work and study experience. You do your LLB, you enter a law firm, you spend 5, 6, 7 years there, and that's kind of about it. And I'm going to move back to Abhisshek for that. Do you think our country, so like if I pick from what Kanika spoke about, the choice to experiment, the choice to go, or the option, I wouldn't even put it as a choice, I'd say the option. Do you think a law firm today or an organization today is going to tell its employees, you know what, take a year off, why don't you go and study what your heart desires, sabbatical or not? Do you think a law firm or an organization in India is ready for that? Because what I take it from all of us is that at the age of 18 or 19, we're not in a position to say, okay, you know what, I am going to become an environmental lawyer for the rest of my life. You have to go out there, put yourself out there, and then say, okay, this is what interests me, I want to go and pursue this. But is our industry ready for it? I know, I may not be appreciated for saying this, but our legal system isn't, our education system isn't. But is our industry ready for it? I mean, there's a typical thing. I wanted to do my master's, and everyone said, oh, you know what, you're going to lose 2 years of experience when you come back. So, as a partner of a law firm, how would you do that if your associate came to you tomorrow and said, you know what, I want to go and do my master's and come back and specialize in this?
So practically, we haven't encountered this situation. That's the first thing in my life. But yes, I have seen a couple of my colleagues, friends, who have moved out in between, went to Columbia, Stanford, like
right.
international universities to get an higher education. And I believe, if I have to say the existing law firm structure, I am a little skeptical whether they would be. I don't foresee that every law firm would have, right? But definitely if I have to put out a suggestion in terms of yes, that should be, yes. But it also differs from how a firm looks out, because it's not only about, because from the firm's point of view, we would have to look out from other aspects also, right? Normally, because this is about the talent retention, we call it to be concept, because we would want that if we have a candidate who is really hard, working hard, is really intelligent, and if he can explore opportunities, and eventually when he comes back, he works with us as a partner or probably a senior member, that would add a value to the firm, right? So, but going with the other stand, it's just a negative also, that people might end up staying abroad also, and they don't end up joining, right? So, as an alternative to this, I'll tell you, I'll share one of my experience. We face this issue on a daily basis, right? Because we tend to work with the colleagues of mine who are like just freshers, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, who doesn't have that kind of a cross-border experience and all that, right? So in Burgeon, what we thought of, we thought of doing some experimental concept. We as a partners, we started off a master class concept, right? And every week, we tend to take a 2 days concept to do a master classes for every colleague of ours, especially the juniors one, to get them up to the speed on that particular market, right? So let's take an example, like I specialize in PVC and M&A. So I would be taking that kind of a responsibility for all my colleagues in the firm to get them up to the speed that how the trend is moving off. It's not only about how the legal education would be, it's also about how the market trend is also going on, because as a law firm, we have to tap that concept also in order to be within that particular domain, right? So, and secondly, we have built in internally, though like in law schools, we have a concept of moot court and all that. And people tend to get a bit of experience in law schools, right? But we thought of, because negotiations is one of the key things we believe in our corporate domain to be one learning thing, which if one person gets up to the speed, he will definitely skill that particular area. And we thought of doing that kind of a concept within our firm. So every Thursday, or probably alternatives, we tend to have that kind of a mood sessions, we call it to be, wherein we do negotiations. We tend to set up the teams. This is the company council, these are the investor councils, or these are the buyers councils or the seller council. We give them the proposition in one of the deals. They play that, we examine them, and we tend to find out ways there is a lack. Like in terms of if any candidate who is lacking on any particular part, we tend to upskill them, we give them another opportunities, or probably upskill them in terms of giving them, like, you have to learn about this, and this next month we'll do another round of that. So that's an alternative. We thought of doing that, and ideally, at this point of time, we had been successful with this, but let's see how it goes forward.
Thank you. Vidhi, I want to ask you, when you decided to go out and do your master's in environmental law, did you ever see it as an opportunity cost? Did you see that you were, and first is, did you see it as an opportunity cost? And second, in hindsight, do you think that cost paid off today?
Thank you for that question. So I definitely placed myself out of the rat race of following any timeline or a chronology in life. So I enhanced my risk appetite for sure. I was like, I'm not going to follow as in by what age I should be what. I'm going to follow my heart, and when you say this, I just believed in myself. So I knew it. So I worked in Ministry of Environment 6 years back, because I knew that someday it will lead me to where I want to be. And that belief in myself today led me to where I am. When I say this with all, with humility, it's my experience, my degree as a company secretary, my experience in environmental law, and my brief experience of working in a corporate, all, integrated, and that's how I landed to be working as an ESG practitioner. So it's a lot about where I had to be out of the stereotypes. I'm somebody who challenges what's usually called the norm. So you would probably, even in my usual course of work, wherever I'm working, I would follow what's the stereotypes, what's the norm. So for me, doing whatever everybody else is doing was something I was sure that I don't want to do. I want to set my own curve, I want to set my own path. And environment law has been very close to me, also because I'm from Uttarakhand, and I've seen, even at this event, I could see a little bit of unsustainable practice all around. That's a lens that I have, and also doing my LLM from WWF, I can see the plastic bottles and things like this around me, so I just have it inherently, and so that's where I wanted to lead my career in. But definitely, when you say opportunity cost, it's something, if you're not following the timeline, things do fall in place. And that's where I am. So I'm quite grateful that I had that support system where I could also believe in myself and do what I wanted to do. Thank you.
Awesome and kind of inspirational, I'll say. Pankaj, I just wanted to come back to you. Your role in-house, from what I understand, in a tech organization. Do you feel that, and if I understand correctly, your experience or your specialization has come from your experience? Subject to correction, you didn't formally have an education in tech law. Have you ever felt that as a handicap? And have you ever felt that, if I would have done this, or if a counterpart or a peer has a formal education in the same area, have you felt that handicap? And if so, do you think your experience has been able to bridge that gap for you professionally?
Thank you for the question. So, I never felt that kind of handicap first, right? I would suggest that, not only LLM is the only way to do your further education, first of all. So what I did in my final year, or maybe in the 4th year, was I also pursued company secretary as well. Okay. And by the time when I law graduated, I was able to finish CS intermediary examination. Now, As rightly pointed out by Abhisshek, that when you are in a law firm, and if you really want to do further education, and you are really hardworking on your subject areas and all, then a lot of time, the law firms obviously give you the support. And I still remember when I was a fresher or a junior associate, I used to request my partner that, my CS final examination are coming. Could you please give me 10 days or maybe 5 days of holiday to just go and give those examinations? So, he or she was like, you can go, but then subject to you put your weekends over the work, do some extra efforts. So, firstly, your experience and your the way you are approaching your specific subject areas will never go waste, first of all. Secondly, when we talk about the experience, the in-hand practical experience, it will never go waste from the perspective that, for example, if I talk about my company as well, where I work, we have various verticals. Now, the business dynamics has become a little complex, I would say. The companies are not want to do a particular kind of business. They inter alia, engage in various kinds of business, and we need people who can actually deliver and have multidisciplinary practical experiences as well. So keeping into mind that, for example, we have obviously good law firms as well over our panel, but then the foremost requirement is that they should actually address the company's interest, and when we talk about in-house and internal team as well, they should understand the business as well, right? So keeping into mind all these facets, first, the experience will never go in waste. Secondly, LLM is not the only way, or the certificate programs or diploma courses which are available on the market. You should actually go for the practical experience, get that practical experience, and then actually implement it. I still remember in my initial days of my job, I remember two people sitting together. One was from a very small college of law, and one did an LLB and LLM, foreign LLM from, I think, London School of Economics or some Oxford or something like that. They both were having same remuneration packages, right? So you should not aim for the education vis-a-vis monetary benefits. If you work hard over the subject lines, definitely it will pay off, and you will never feel, you just because you did not do a formal education in terms of LLM, you will never feel handicapped. It will always pay off.
I'm going to move back to Kanika, and I have a two-part question for you, for the two parts of the audience that I see. We have deans and we have academics from universities in our country. So the first part of the question is that I know we're far away from a legal overhaul where specialization is inculcated into our curriculum. One, you spoke highly of the system abroad. How do you think in the most feasible manner that's a shift that our country can have? And the second part of the question is for the students sitting out here, is that, to be honest, that legal overhaul is going to take a while. Students don't have the time to wait for a legal education overhaul. So what should they do today?
I think it would be wrong to say that things are not developing or things are not moving in the right direction when it comes to legal education in India. I think it is developing at a very rapid pace. I am not somebody who has a great insight into how universities in India function, but today when I talk to students who want to come and intern at the firm, or when I speak to junior associates or just lawyers starting out at conferences, I feel that they haven't confined themselves to just the syllabus given by the university. I feel like students over here are now aiming much higher than just traditional practice, whether it's interning at other countries, not interning just at law firms, but getting the exposure at other institutes, companies for that matter, going for extracurriculars which are not just moot courts, getting a flavor of what practice would be like and experimenting with it. I think there is no doubt that education, not just in the legal sector, but across all sectors, India is one of the leading countries for that. I think you have exceptional lawyers coming out of universities over here. I mean, this is what I say even for the industry of arbitration, for that matter. It is developing. It is developing at a great pace. It's going in the right direction, but give it time. Just give it some time. You can't expect changes to happen overnight. I was the first batch who did not give grade 10th boards. And we were graded for how neat our uniforms were to how neat our handwriting was. And trust me, I wasn't great at it. And eventually 10th board exams came back. So I don't know what the status is now. It's a trial and error method. Try a few things, may work out, it may not work out. At the end of the day, the zest needs to stay alive to learn more. I always tell, and I would say the same thing to even the lawyers starting out today, first 5 years of your profession, in my opinion, don't think about the money. Wear horse blinders, find yourself not a right firm, but a right mentor. Because that mentor is going to condition you for the rest of your career. And if you have that sorted, money will follow. It's a given. So take it easy. Just grind and hustle for 5 years first.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. So I'm going to take closing remarks from all of our panelists, and I'm going to ask you the question of the topic as the question, but with a slight tweak from my end. The tweak is that, is advanced legal education the only path to specialization in India? So we'll start from Abhisshek and move to Vidhi.
It's a very tweaky point, because I have seen in my life people right coming out from a college, any normal university, and doing really great in law firms. They are partners, they are really earning good. And I have also seen people who have done specializations, either going abroad, taking national courses, and they are also doing good, right? So I think it depends on person to person, I would say that. Because it's not necessary, there is no cure formula, I would say, that you just take a specialization and that hits the road, right? It depends person to person, that it could be that it works one way, it works for other way for anyone. So.
Yeah, like I said, specialization is a consequence of your interests. So if one is clear about what he or she intends to do, so be it environment law, be it arbitration, be it cyber securities, if you're sure that this is where your heart desires to be, then why not having a specialized degree? Because that will give you a formal education base in that area. That will also give you an edge over others. So it a lot depends on gaining that clarity through working in different areas where you can say, oh, this is the space where I enjoy the most. This is the space where I can see myself thriving. And if that clarity is there, which is very important if you are in a legal profession, to have that clear thoughts, if that clarity is there, then having a specialized degree will definitely help you. But unless you don't have a clarity, just going for the sake of having a specialized degree may not fetch you immediate benefits.
Even I have the same opinion, and I agree with my co-panelist that the first and foremost thing should be, you should be clear in your mind what you want to do in your life, and pursuant to which you should opt the best way you want to follow your dreams. It can be maybe through a formal route of education, maybe an LLM or maybe a company secretary course, something like that, or it can be a practical experience where you just after your law graduation, you just enter into the profession, have that in-hand practical experience, and then eventually lead to that specialization. So, as rightly pointed out by the other co-panelists, there is no fixed hard and fast rule as to how to go about it. Each person's, it's completely case-to-case basis. You need to understand the circumstances around you. If the relevant factors like money, investment, time, because you should also know that if you are going for an LLM or a further education, you might also be leaving that opportunity because you basically are not in the market. You should accept that fact also. So you should make a balance if your situation is in a manner that it is better that you should be in the market and then eventually be 2 or 3 years of PQE experience and then eventually go for an LLM, then you should do that. If it is like you are much more, for example, you want to go in academics, then it would be a better thing that you should do an LLM or maybe a PhD and then go for your teaching and similar kind of lines. So it's all about what you want in your life and how you want to achieve. And this is about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kanika?
I think, as everyone else has said over here, it really depends on what works best for you. I think we all would agree that being at a law school can be very intimidating, and the performance pressure is quite high. Expectations are quite high. So a lot of times we look at 5 other people around us and we think that why don't we also do the same thing? And maybe it works for us, but it doesn't work that way. You just have to see where your interest lies and take it easy, see what works best for you. And it's not like your career is expiring in 5 years. You have a long time to go, so take decisions in a timely manner and be thoughtful of what you need to do.
Awesome, thank you. Since we have 6 seconds to go, do we have a question? The gentleman in the pink, followed by the lady in the specs after that.
Yeah, I'm Siddharth from Government Law College, Mumbai. So my question is actually to those people who pursue their specialization abroad, because in my personal opinion, I think Pankaj sir's approach is much more India-centric, much more inclusive, and caters to a wider audience, whereas approaching an LLM abroad, the opportunity cost is very high. It's for the privileged. So I would like to shed some light over there. And my second part of the question is to Vidhi ma'am. Today's ESG market, the carbon trading mechanism that has come into the picture, I mean adaptation and auditing that has come into the picture of the SEBI regulation. How do you think that in this market a lawyer can make an inroad into without a broad degree from like an environment degree?
So when you say that, how a lawyer can be an ESG practitioner is if somebody can interpret law, and definitely having a company secretary degree, I feel definitely helps you to take care of the governance aspect. So E and S and G is basically made of 3 elements. Of course, E and S and G is definitely your corporate law, your the practices. So that basically a lawyer is quite capable enough of handling it, right? And S is mainly about the policies that in the company, what should be there and how you can make it more inclusive, right? And not just in paper, but in spirit also it's followed. So the policies have to be drafted in that way. When you say E, it's definitely having a background in environmental law or environmental science will definitely help. So SEBI's BRSR is a framework which lawyers are definitely capable of handling. So ESG is one role where a lawyer is positioned to handle it, because a lawyer is capable enough of handling the governance aspect, the S aspect, and for E definitely I feel one needs to have like a specialization in that front, because E is not something which is commercial. We have had enough of commercialization in the world, right? So we need to have more of sustainability and that conservation lens, that how as an ESG practitioner, the sustainability practices can be embedded in the ESG framework, right? And if that can be done, like, so if I'm working in an insurance company to ensure how responsible investment is being done by the companies, where the funds of a policy holder is going in which all companies, is it further fueling the fossil fuel companies or is it going to renewable energy companies? Right, so that's the conservation lens that one needs to have, and for that I think it's besides the lawyer, it's also that sustainability lens that one need to just keep polishing it to ensure that you're doing it. So definitely to answer your question, a lawyer is quite capable of handling ESG framework for a company.
Kanika, the second question on...
The first question you mean?
Oh, first question, sorry.
Yeah, to answer the first question, when I say that choose what works best for you, I don't just mean by the cost of it or the brand name of it. I would go a little further than that, and I did go a little further than that when I had to. It's about where you want to practice. What is the market situation in the country you want to practice in? Look, I had full plans of staying back in the UK. I had no plans of going anywhere else. Although Middle East has always been home for me, despite spending 5 years over there, despite spending the cost that I incurred over there, Brexit got announced. What could I do? I had no choice. And India, the political environment of India, the market situation of India 12 years back was very different from how it is today. Even today, if I want, I can probably take a flight and go to the Middle East and practice over there, but I will not. Because I feel that more than the Middle East, more than Europe, India is at its peak right now. The kind of contracts, the size of claims that as a lawyer you will be dealing with in India today, the kind of exposure to projects that you will have in India today, you're not going to have it anywhere else. You're sitting in the 5th largest economy in the world. It's only going to go bigger than what it is right now. So plan your future, not just according to your individual capacity, but also according to the country's capacity, the country's situation where you're situated. Why would you want to go anywhere else when you're sitting in the hub of commercial activity today? It's a choice, it's not a necessity. Sitting in India, having an opportunity to work with the projects in India is a choice that any smart worker of any industry should make today.
I just like to highlight the gentleman that obviously, every person is different, right? So when I was in my final year, so there's always hidden facts. I was offered a scholarship to go abroad, okay? And at that particular point of time, I was also offered a position in a law firm who wants to start its corporate practice, and there was a partner, and there was a junior associate, and I could be that person. So at that particular point of time, I made a decision. I didn't want to go for the scholarship and all, right? I had CS for the knowledge perspective, so I just took that well-researched call that let me do the CS part and have my degree value, and at the same point of time, let me be part of a firm where I can contribute from the scratch. So whatever suits you do that. Do not copy or see or other people. If someone is going abroad, it might suit him or her, right? Just have the clarity what you want to in your life, and it will work definitely.